Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, please welcome our wonderful panel this morning from the new incredible film Cinderella. David Barron, Holliday Grainger, Lily James, Kenneth Branagh, Richard Madden, Sandy Powell, and Allison Shearmur. Good morning, everyone. How are you all? I'm going to start off, if that's okay, and nip down the line, and then we'll throw it out to our lovely audience. And Kenneth, I'm going to start with you in the middle, if that's okay, sir.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations on how this film's been received so far.
Thank you very much.
It's just wonderful.
Thank you.
I'm really interested to know who did you set out to make the film for?
Good question. I felt as though it was, perhaps I would say this, it was for everyone, in as much as when I told people that I was perhaps going to do the film, I felt I got a tremendous reaction from lots and lots of grown-ups, as well as every kind of variety of man, woman and child, that made me feel that the story was very personal to people. And whatever their age, they might have seen or read or currently have read to them an account of the story. And that, in a strange way, although people have talked about the fact that it's been done many times, there seems to be a sort of ritual in that that's necessary. Anyway, on whatever level, whether it was people saying, is Gus in the movie, which they were very keen to know about, and how many parents are going to die, that kind of question. And just sort of, what was the period and everything, the kind of level of interest was high, and a sort of personal sense of the story and importance of the story made me feel we could do it for everyone, without sort of alienating folks. So that's the way I went at it. Richard,
never mind it being every girl's dream to play a princess. You've done the prince. Tick that one off the list.
Tick. Bit of royalty.
Done.
I didn't really think about wanting to be a prince when I was a kid, but I did play soldiers, and he's one of them, so I kind of focused on that.
There's an amazing tone in the film, which I guess is down to a lot of different factors, but the scenes in particular with you and your on-screen father, there's just a lovely warmth there that feels very, very natural.
Thank you.
Was that scripted? Was there an element of you being able to improvise at all with Derek? Or?
We did a little bit of improv, didn't we? I think that's what was good about bringing out the kind of sense of humour between them. I just loved working with Derek. He's wonderful, and we had fun with it, and that was part of what we wanted to do, is kind of make sure that these two had a sense of humour, and I think particularly for me, I wanted to take my sense of humour from my father. So it was great that Derek was so good and warm and funny as well, because then I could feed off it.
Because there was actually, specifically, there was a moment in the scene in the when they first meet where that little repetition of yes I would, no you wouldn't, yes I would, no you wouldn't, and that kind of thing happened. And then when we got to the scene with Lils and Rich on the swing, I think it was your idea to kick, or I can't remember, one of these two very brilliant people came up with the idea of why don't we do that as a kind of callback, and you were talking about tone, and it was allowing as much room for these tiny things. They're tiny things, but cumulatively they make for a sort of human texture, and they were all onto it very swiftly.
Sandy, congratulations. I mean, wow. I mean, a costume designer's dream, I imagine, having, or was it? Because there's so many images that people already have in their head associated with the Cinderella story. Did you kind of take that and run with it, or where did you start?
I have been saying that it's a costume designer's dream. This really is. Yeah, it really is. What I think was thrilling for me was actually it's a film about girls, where a lot of the main characters are girls. I mean, okay, there are the boy characters too, but really predominantly women, which doesn't happen that often. And I'd just come straight from The Wolf of Wall Street, which couldn't be further away. And none of the women have clothes on in that film. So it was a dream, and I just, as you say, I ran with it.
Ali, morning to you. Congratulations on the casting of this as well, in terms of, I don't know, when similarly with what I asked Sandy, in the sense that there is so much, the characters already have so much attached to them because everyone knows the story. Did that make it easier for you or harder in terms of kind of casting and where you started with that?
Well, I would say that I would turn to the director, because we were certainly very aware that these characters brought with them great archetypal histories, but Ken's approach to this movie was always about mining a complex psychology for all of these characters and really looking into the depth and to expand their stories based on those kind of emotional explorations. So I can't imagine it was ever easy, but I will say that Ken definitely had very clear ideas for casting. And we were always very much in sync because we were all so much a part of the conversation about who these characters are.
And David, if I can bring you in, please, in terms of this, the notion that this story is still relevant. It's a story that people still want to hear, and they want to hear people's, adaptations and thoughts on it.
Yeah, I was very worried when Ken mentioned to me that Disney had been in touch about a live-action version of Cinderella. I said, interesting. Yeah. How do we do something that's not, she doesn't have a sword in her hand, she's not decapitating the stepmother. How do we do something that feels relevant for a contemporary audience and is, in its own way, kind of faithful to the animated classic? And Ken he's a very good salesman for a start, actually, and so within about 15 minutes, I thought it was a great idea. But he had a very clear vision about how to make this film a film for today, and it was this film that had this central message of courage and kindness. And it just seemed that if he pulled it off, which he did, it would work for today and work for this contemporary audience.
Thank you. Holliday. Amazing partnership, and this kind of crazy, you're kind of one piece of this crazy two-piece puzzle of these two characters. Mm-hmm. That must have been a lot of fun to bring to life. Did you enjoy that kind of,
yeah,
the kind of fighting with each other, that kind of, that pull that you both had with each other?
It really was fun, because I mean, as an actor, you quite often quite sort of insular in your characters, but it was great for the first time to be part of a double act, and Ken really wanted to kind of play off that idea of us speed running the lines and finishing each other's sentences, and Sophie and I spent a lot of time together during filming, so I feel like by the end we literally were finishing each other's sentences anyway. Yeah,
that's why she's not allowed here today. Lily, congratulations. An amazing, wonderful portrayal of Cinderella. I wanted to ask you if there was any qualities in the character that you really connected with, that you really...
I would like to say all of them. When I auditioned, there was a breakdown of the character, and there was just this line that it said that she had a generosity of spirit, and I just felt, it just sort of, that felt like that's something I've sort of, as a kid, my dad would even say those words, and I felt like it just spoke to me, and I wanted that idea of this character having such warmth and such an open heart, and she lives in the moment, she sees the good in things, all these qualities that are amazing. But yeah, I guess you always have to draw from yourself and channel your character through yourself.
Great, thank you. And we'll describe to our audience. Gentlemen, straight up there. That was before I even asked. I like that. That's good. If the rest of you can be like that, perfect.
Right, hello there. Firstly, the film is incredible. Loved it. I have questions here for Holliday and Richard from Maya, who's 7, and Rebecca, who is 3 years old. Holliday, Rebecca would like to know, I'll read it out as it is. Why did you and the bad mummy rip Cinderella's beautiful dress? And Maya would like to know, did you feel shy in those trousers?
Holliday, we'll start with you, and we'll all wait with bated breath for the next answer.
Well, I feel like... who asked that question? Sorry, was it... That was Bex. Well, I feel like the stepmother's kind of the leader of the pack, and her 2 daughters sort of follow in her wake. And so I think they just, the 2 sisters just kind of want to do anything to please mum. But actually, in my defence, Anastasia didn't actually rip the dress. She stood back a little bit.
And Richard.
There's a certain degree of self-consciousness that you have to get over, which is kind of when you first have the trousers on and you want to stand with your back to the wall because you feel exposed, but then that's exposing the front, so you want to turn around and have your front to the wall, but then your back's exposed. But luckily, all the guys, we were in the same boat together, so we all felt as silly as each other. And actually, once you get on set, these costumes madly feel really masculine, and they fit in with these beautiful sets that Dante made, and you kind of feel regal, and it actually gives you a confidence once you get over the initial embarrassment.
Brilliant, thank you. Gentlemen here, first please, and then we'll work away along.
Hello. Question for Kenneth and Sandy. I don't recall seeing a film as ravishing as this since maybe Powell and Pressburger.
Wow.
Were they kind of an influence? And also, what were your visual influences for this film?
Well, I mean, Sandy had been working on the film before I arrived, and so one of the joys was to have the first conversations, and as I recall anyway, Sandy laid out for me sort of influences really across the centuries. First of all, we established that I wanted to sort of blur. We could blur across the 19th and 18th centuries, and actually blur in terms of shapes and things, maybe even in the 20th century. And what was good to see was that we both felt that across worlds in which we would find the way to make it all joined up writing, that basically the invitation was for Sandy's imagination to go away and do the amazing work that she's done to make it all live in the Cinderella world, but really try and borrow from wherever we felt a shape, a color, a texture, revealed character, and where Sandy felt it fitted into the whole picture. We talked about, I mean, it's a wonderful compliment, because I revere those guys, a huge personal inspiration, that particular partnership. So from my point of view, that was the beginning of the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, again, really, it was sort of, for me, it was 19th century, all over the 19th century, with bits of 1940s and 1950s thrown in. Like for The Stepmother, I was looking at those sort of 1940s actresses like Marlene Dietrich, Joan Crawford, and when they were in films made in the 1940s, set in the 19th century, how it looks, it's all a bit wrong. You can still see the 1940s, and I really liked that element for Kate. And then for the sisters, I kind of went a decade higher and went to sort of 1950s versions of 19th century. But then in terms of the overall look, I mean, I was thinking actually very much of children's storybooks and colour and being bright and appealing to kids and being able to sort of sum up a character with a colour straight away.
Great, thank you. Do you want to go there? Yeah, there first, and then we'll come down to the front row, and then we'll come over there.
So the film's got a great reception, so firstly, congratulations for that. This is a question in two parts, I guess, mainly for Lily, Kenneth and Sandy. There have been sort of concerns raised sort of more than once about the corseting in Cinderella's dress and how sort of teensy it makes her waist. The animated version has obviously been a sort of a family favourite for decades, but parents have raised concerns about issues of body image and the impression the dress could leave on their children. They're worried about taking their children to see it. I guess the first part is, do you think those concerns are fair? And the second part is, do they concern you at all?
Sandy, do you want to pick that up?
I'll go first. I don't understand what the concerns are, actually. I mean, Lily does have a small waist, but then so do all the other girls in the film. All the girls in the film are wearing corsets because that's what you wear with period clothes. It creates the silhouette for the period. Holliday and Kate, everyone else had small waists too. Lily's dress in particular is an optical illusion, I have to say. I mean, the diameter of the skirt is about 2 meters, and then it's got the width here, and that really does make the waist look smaller than it actually is. I mean,
Can I just say one thing? I'm a mom, and one of the producers of the film, and I think it's gotten a lot of attention, but the funny thing is, it's kind of paying attention to the opposite of the theme of the movie, which is your sense of beauty and your strength is what's on the inside. And Sandy's right, I was there for all of the early fittings. I would look like I have a 2-inch waist. There's a giant set of shoulders, and there's butterflies, and it was customary for women to be corset at the time. And there's 2 miles of fabric in the skirt. So not only is it an optical illusion, but I think it's so interesting that the conversation has been about the outside, because this is a movie where the real emphasis is on the inside. So as a mom, I would really encourage us to really, because my 12-year-old daughter thought the dress was really pretty, but what she took away from the film was the priority of courage and kindness.
Yeah, it's like the questions that you have from your daughter, and I've had friends, kids, and little boy, Daniel, he's 9, and he said, "It's amazing how you promised your mum to be kind and good and you remembered it." And I just thought, that's the message. Why on earth are we focusing on something so irrelevant, you know?
So
There's
let's move
much
on to the
beauty.
next question, shall we? Lady in the front here, please. Have you got a microphone there already? No, let's get one to this lady here quickly. Thank you. That'd be great. Thanks.
Hi, to Lily and Kenneth. First of all, congratulations on the film.
Thank you.
Cinderella is an iconic character loved by generations. Touching on what you've just sort of said, in an era where Disney are trying to reinvent the Disney princess, as it were, how do you feel Cinderella is stepping up to this modern audience, and what's it say to young girls today?
Do you want to go first?
Well, I think it's sort of what we were talking about, that this strength can come from within, this dignified strength and grace, and also that in doing so she finds such joy and happiness in her life regardless of her situation, even if it's just talking to little Gus. But when I read the script, I was sort of bowled over by the fact that it was such a truthful, you know, retelling of the fairy tale without any tricks or twists really, but it felt really strong, and a girl I really wanted to play and felt inspired playing her.
Yeah, it feels as though it's a different kind of empowerment, but I think it is empowerment, and I think that she makes proactive choices, even if those choices are sometimes to be thoughtful and to be considerate. So it's a question maybe of reconsidering the notion of action and empowerment. I'm going to quote, this will be weird at a press conference, but I'm about to quote Gandhi, right? So he says, these are quotes that were at the memorial service for the great Richard Attenborough the other day. Some lines from Gandhi to apply, and we discussed this function. Seems like a crazy thing to talk about in relation to Cinderella, but I think it goes to the heart of the question. Gandhi said, amongst many other things, "When I despair, I remember that all through history, the way of truth and love have always won. There have been tyrants and murderers, and for a time they can seem invincible, but in the end they always fall. Think of it always." And in relation to why someone like perhaps Cinderella doesn't do some of the things that some people may expect her to do, but does them in a different way, he may have some light to throw on it in this way when he says, "There are many causes I would die for, not one I would kill for. An eye for an eye only turns the whole world blind." And so we tried to find, in obviously a much lighter way that attempts to, trip lightly over it, the sort of the soul of the piece in there. But the truth is, something like Cinderella has the possibility of encompassing that amount of detail, which we don't ever need to spell out to a 5-year-old child. It's just in the fabric of the doing of it. And so when people talk about the sincerity of the movie, it comes from that sort of place, not because we're trying to be holier than thou. It's just that I believe it.
Thank you. Lady here with the microphone there, thank you.
Follow Gandhi. My question is, this film looks visually stunning. I mean, it's got great palaces, wonderful special effects, and a central character with beautiful blonde hair. I just wonder if your experiences making Thor influenced this at all, or assisted you in, sort of knowing how to go about making this?
Obviously, I've become obsessive about blonde hair at a certain length. I think trying to combine worlds that have some fantastical elements, or maybe a supernatural or a magical element, with human situations that are familiar to us and where the motivations are recognizable, and the situations, the loss of parents or challenges in love and human dynamics also exist, and that the two don't sort of jar in the wrong way but might add up to something entertaining, are a sort of unusual combination of things, but they're very, very friendly to cinema, where that kind of thing offers a kind of visual immersion, but still a kind of emotional connection. So they have that kind of connection, I guess.
Thank you. Lady on the end, please. Thanks.
Hi. There wasn't any singing, sadly, in this Cinderella. Would the cast still have gone for the roles if there was singing in it? What was the reason why you didn't have songs, and what's your favourite Disney songs?
There's a little bit.
Would you like to answer the first question?
I would have still done it for sure. I'd have loved it. In fact, why wasn't there songs?
I'd have loved to have done it with music, but I'm pretty sure that Ken wouldn't have wanted me to sing.
Singing Prince?
I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have got cast. But there is actually singing. At the end of the movie, Lily sings a song, as does Helena. So there's a little bit of singing there.
And we have a little bit of lavender as well.
We have a bit of lavender.
Yeah, indeed. And the Disney animated film was full of singing and lots of cats and mouse action, and we have so much else going on in the movie. This felt the natural way to go, and we do have a sensational score, in my view, anyway, by Patrick Doyle. So there's a strong musical element, but. I'm going to be in very great trouble after this now. They're all going to say to me, why didn't you use songs? So thank you for that.
No, Patrick Doyle's music wins.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, goes this lady here in the third row in the middle. Thank you.
Hi, my questions are for Richard. I know that you toned down your Scottish accent, and I was wondering if that was a requirement for the role, first of all, and second of all, was there anything you could take from your role as Rob Stark to use in Cinderella, such as maybe horse riding or anything?
Well, the accent I had to obviously tie to Derek, and I don't know, if I'd been Scottish, it would have been a bit of a statement of where the kingdom was, I think. So it was much better to do that, and it worked a lot better, I think. And in terms of Rob Stark, I mean, yeah, there's horse riding and sword fighting and stuff like that, but I suppose one of the parallels with Prince Kit is this sense of responsibility being thrust on you you've not asked for. And I think that's something I kind of, I could relate to the two of them. I think it's a really strange, unique position to be in, is royalty, where you have no choice over what your duties are.
Thank you. Lady in the white shirt, and then we'll come to the lady in the front here.
Hiya, this is a question for Richard, just following on from that. Did Prince Charming not learn anything from Rob Stark? Again, he's married for love and not advantage.
But it works out a bit better for the prince. I think he learned not to go into Westeros.
Lady in the green jumper in the front, please.
Hi, so Cinderella obviously believes in fairy godmothers and magic. Do you guys believe in fairy godmothers and magic?
Holiday?
Oh yeah, I still can't help but definitely believe that fairies are real. I'm pretty sure witches are out there as well. Like, I've been spending a bit of time in Ireland recently, and I'm definitely sure all the forests there are full of all sort of magical creatures. But that's just me.
No, I'm with you. I believe.
I think that I like the fact that the film allows for people to maybe have a think about that. We contain our magic a little less than in other accounts of the story to this central single visit of the fairy godmother, to just allow for the idea that different kind of internal transformations can occur, maybe without that extra help. But I think it's very nice to think that occasionally the universe in some form will come and help us out when we need it.
Gentleman's got a microphone there.
Hi guys, question to Lily and Richard, if I may. Did you guys look in terms of inspiration for your characters? Did you look more towards the new reimagination from Into the Woods in terms of those characters, or was it more towards the traditional side of the characters that you looked when it came for inspiration?
I've still not seen Into the Woods yet.
Great. I didn't look at Into the Woods for inspiration. I mean, we'd already shot it. I mean, I know the music, I love it, but I tried to draw from lots of different things. I mean, I watched the animation a lot, too much maybe, but and read all different versions of the fairy tales and tried to make it as rich as possible where I drew from.
I think the tone of the animation, yeah, but the prince only has 2 or 3 scenes. We don't even get to learn his name in the animation, so this was something much more that me and Ken just worked together to try and create a young man, because we don't actually know who the prince is. You know, I think everyone's got an idea of who he is, but we don't actually have much to go on.
Thank you. Gentleman with the microphone.
Question for Kenneth. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. I thought it was pure magic as a movie. And what I wanted to ask was, we were mentioning earlier the influences, you know, the lavishness of it, the fabulous colour and so on. My particular interest was in that absolutely supercalifragilisticexpialidocious ballroom scene. And I wondered, I mean, The Leopard, War and Peace, Waterloo, etc. Any particular films with ballroom scenes that especially influenced you to create this glorious extravaganza?
Well, thank you very much. Particular congratulations on pronouncing supercalifragilistic in the way you did, uninterrupted there. That's, if you haven't practiced, that's very impressive. Along the way, we talked about various things and shared various things, and it was a conversation that, you know, Sandy and I would have along with Dante Ferretti, our production designer, and Harris Ambalukas, our cinematographer, and extended across the whole family of our sort of creative team, David Balfour, our prop master, etc. The kinds of films that were wonderful to go and visit, apart from Powell and Pressburger, which we looked at again, The Red Shoes, but we looked at Gone with the Wind, Wizard of Oz, Visconti's The Leopard. We also looked at Cyrano de Bergerac, the Rapinoe film. Amelie, actually, for some wonderful camera work, and particularly kind of the swooping shots that end up on close-ups of our heroine. And Age of Innocence is a Scorsese movie that I particularly love for what you were just describing there, the immersion into a world that you feel you can see and taste and touch and smell. So certainly we basically went to the classics, but I hasten to add that Ms. Powell and Mr. Ferretti and Mr. Zambalukas were out there on their own in terms of forging our own particular version of it, because we were allowed to, as Rich was saying, in relation to the relationship between the king and the prince, we were able to, inside our classical world, nevertheless, to forge our own rules, our own palace livery, our own color schemes, everything about it we could rewrite. So we were inspired by those, but felt also very, very free in our own work on it.
Okay, lady there, and I think this is going to be our last question, actually.
Congratulations again to all. What a fantastic film. My question is about the ballroom as well, actually. It's about the first dance. That was one of my favorite moments in the film, and I just wanted to ask Lily and Richard what went into preparation for that.
Lots. I mean, I kind of always think there was 3 of us in this relationship. There was the prince and Cinderella and the dress. So we had to learn a new technique of dance, which was kind of like skiing, so you don't kind of destroy it. And we practiced for a couple of months before Sandy would let us anywhere near the actual dress, and managed to kind of tear up a couple of practiced ones in the process.
Yeah, and so it took a lot of work, but there was a couple of moments, and I don't know whether this was planned, Ken, but I sort of came in, I went down the steps, and it sort of all happened real time, and I walked in, I'm in a real ballroom, everything feels real, I mean, it's just there, and I walked in, and I meet the prince, and we dance, and we didn't know when you were going to shout cut, and you ended up, it was big wides, and you did it all the way through, and no one knew whether we were going to stop or not, and this energy was building to the point where I was just giggling. I was dancing and I was giggling, and then we did it all the way through till we ran out. So the work we then did meant that on the day when those specific shots happened, I completely forgot it was only the dance, and it was one of my best experiences I've ever had filming. It was amazing.
It was also the because of all the preparation that Rich and Lils both did, in the ballroom itself. I think it was very special for all of us who worked on it those days, and that event, the event of that happening, i.e. the two of them, always just the two of them, always the whole dance, always with the entire ballroom watching them, and always with this sense that a couple of things were at play. There was the whole lavishness of the world and the sumptuous nature of it, and yet we were all overhearing this very sort of intimate conversation. And I swear to God that despite all of that, as a group, the moment that Richard's hand went onto the small of Lily's back, everybody in the room went, including the boys. That sequence was always about that tiny thing and that big thing.
Thank you very much for being here this morning. Please, a huge round of applause for our wonderful panel this morning. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys!
Hey You Guys, huh?
Hey You Guys.
Is that from the Goonies?
It is indeed, yes.
Nice.
Hey